Chapter 1. The Assignment. Nathan Cole stared at the blinking notification on his datapad, the green glow casting a faint light over the cluttered desk of his small apartment on Epsilon Station. The mercenary for hire had taken dozens of jobs over the years, each one leaving a deeper scar than the last. But this message felt different. The name attached to the job request was unlisted, marked only with a symbol he didn't recognize, a sleek, spiraling glyph that seemed vaguely Torvin. The message was brief and to the point. Escort required for high-value cargo. Destination, Balrax Prime. Compensation, 50,000 credits. Discretion mandatory. It was the kind of offer Nathan couldn't afford to ignore. 50,000 credits was retirement money, enough to buy a quiet plot on some backwater moon where he could live out the rest of his days without worrying about who was coming after him. Still, something about the job gnawed at the back of his mind. High-value cargo usually meant high risk, and the mention of discretion only added to his unease. But Nathan had learned long ago that questions didn't pay the bills, jobs did. He tapped the acceptance button on the datapad, sending a brief reply to confirm his availability. Almost immediately, the glyph blinked out, replaced by a set of coordinates and a single line of text. Docking Bay 47. Arrive at dawn. Nathan leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. What the hell am I getting into this time? The sun hadn't risen yet when Nathan arrived at Docking Bay 47, a cavernous space that smelled of fuel and metal. The low hum of idling spacecraft filled the air, and the faint blue glow of shield generators bathed the area in an otherworldly light. Nathan was used to shady deals in places like this, but the sight that greeted him was unlike anything he'd expected. Standing near a sleek, black transport ship were two Torvin women, their tall, elegant forms impossible to miss. The Torvin were a rare and enigmatic species, known for their striking appearances and almost supernatural presence. These two were no exception. Their skin was a deep, obsidian black, shimmering faintly as if catching and reflecting light that wasn't there. They wore flowing garments that shifted colors subtly, like oil on water, and their eyes, an arresting blend of silver and gold, seemed to pierce straight through him. "You're Nathan Cole," one of them said. Her voice was smooth, with a melodic undertone that made the simple statement sound like a command. "Yeah," Nathan replied, instinctively adjusting the strap of his plasma rifle. "And you are?" "I am Liriana," she said, inclining her head slightly. "This is my sister, Sareth. We are your cargo." Nathan raised an eyebrow. "You're the cargo?" "We are what you've been hired to escort," Sareth said, her tone sharper than her sister's. "And we expect you to perform your duties without unnecessary questions." Nathan bit back a retort. He wasn't in the habit of arguing with clients, especially ones who paid this well. But the twins' cold, commanding demeanor rubbed him the wrong way. "Fine," he said, crossing his arms. "Where exactly are we going?" Liriana gestured toward a map on her datapad, the holographic display highlighting a route across Balrax Prime's wastelands. "The transport hub," she said. "It's approximately 400 kilometers from here. We must arrive within 5 days." Nathan studied the map, noting the treacherous terrain and lack of safe zones along the route. Balrax Prime was a hostile planet, its surface plagued by violent storms, dangerous wildlife, and lawless scavengers who wouldn't hesitate to ambush an unarmed traveler. "This isn't going to be a walk in the park," he muttered. "That's why we hired you," Sareth said, her expression unreadable. Nathan nodded, tightening the straps on his gear. "Let's get moving then. The sooner we start, the better." The wastelands of Balrax Prime were as unforgiving as Nathan had expected. The first day's journey took them through jagged rock formations and sprawling sand dunes, the harsh winds whipping around them like invisible knives. The sun, a pale green orb in the sky, cast an eerie light over the landscape, making everything look surreal and distorted. Nathan led the way, his rifle at the ready. The twins followed closely behind, their movements graceful despite the uneven terrain. They carried themselves with an air of calm confidence, as if they were untouched by the planet's hostility. But Nathan wasn't fooled. He'd seen enough over the years to know that confidence could be a mask, and the way the twins occasionally glanced over their shoulders suggested they were more nervous than they let on. By the time they stopped to set up camp for the night, Nathan was on edge. He'd caught glimpses of movement in the distant shadows that didn't belong to the rocks or the wind. "We're being followed," he said as he unpacked his gear. Liriana and Sareth exchanged a glance, their expressions unreadable. "We're aware," Liriana said finally. Nathan frowned. "And you didn't think to mention it?" "It's nothing we can't handle," Sareth said, her tone dismissive. Nathan muttered a curse under his breath. He didn't like being kept in the dark, especially not when it came to his own safety. As they sat around the small campfire, Nathan couldn't shake the feeling that the twins were hiding something. They spoke to each other in hushed tones, their language a fluid mix of melodic syllables and sharp consonants that Nathan couldn't understand. "Mind filling me in on what's going on?" he asked, his patience wearing thin. Liriana looked at him, her silver-gold eyes reflecting the firelight. "Your job is to escort us," she said simply. "Nothing more." Nathan clenched his jaw but didn't press the issue. He'd been in the business long enough to know when a client wasn't going to talk, and pushing them usually did more harm than good. Still, as he lay in his bedroll that night, staring up at the alien sky, he couldn't shake the feeling that this job was going to be far more complicated than he'd anticipated. By the second day, the terrain had become even more hostile. The winds carried with them a fine, abrasive dust that clung to everything, and the rocky outcroppings provided little shelter from the planet's unpredictable weather. Nathan's unease grew with each passing hour. The shadows he'd seen the day before were back, and this time they were closer. He couldn't tell how many there were or what they wanted, but he knew they weren't friendly. "Stay close," he told the twins as they made their way through a narrow canyon. Liriana and Sareth obeyed without argument, their expressions unusually serious. Whatever was following them, it had them spooked too. As the canyon walls closed in around them, Nathan felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end. The air was heavy with tension, and he could sense that something was about to happen. Then, without warning, the shadows emerged. Chapter 2. The First Encounter. The shadows that had been stalking them emerged from the canyon walls like phantoms, their forms humanoid but obscured by tattered cloaks and masks designed to filter out Balrac's Prime's abrasive winds. Their movements were fluid, silent, and deliberate. Nathan counted at least 8 of them, though there could have been more hiding in the crevices above. "Bounty hunters," Nathan muttered, raising his plasma rifle, his body tensed, ready for the inevitable fight. The apparent leader stepped forward, his mask sporting a crude symbol painted in red jagged fong. His voice crackled through a voice modulator. "We don't want you, human. Hand over the Torvin twins, and you can walk away." Nathan glanced at Liriana and Sareth. Both women stood still, their expressions calm but their eyes alert. They weren't panicking. If anything, they looked annoyed. "Not happening," Nathan said, tightening his grip on his weapon. "You want them, you'll have to go through me." The leader tilted his head as if amused. "Admirable, but foolish." He gestured with 2 fingers, and his men began to fan out, surrounding the trio. Nathan fired the first shot, the plasma bolt tearing through the air and striking one of the bounty hunters square in the chest. The figure crumpled to the ground, smoke rising from the scorched hole in his armor. The rest of the hunters sprang into action, firing back with plasma rifles and kinetic weapons. The canyon erupted into chaos. The sound of gunfire echoed off the walls, mingling with the sharp crackle of plasma discharges. Nathan moved with practiced efficiency, using the terrain to his advantage. He ducked behind a boulder, popping up to take precise shots that dropped 2 more hunters. Liriana and Sareth, however, were not cowering behind cover. To Nathan's shock, they stood their ground in the open, their hands raised as if commanding unseen forces. A faint glow began to emanate from their bodies, a shimmering light that grew brighter with each passing second. "What the hell are you doing?" Nathan shouted, ducking as a plasma bolt zipped past his head. "Stay down," Liriana replied, her voice carrying an authority that brooked no argument. The air around the twins shimmered like a heat wave, and suddenly, the ground beneath the bounty hunters began to tremble. Cracks formed in the rocky terrain, and with a deafening roar, jagged spikes of black crystal shot up from the ground, impaling 3 of the hunters where they stood. The remaining hunters hesitated, their confidence shaken. Nathan used the opportunity to take out another with a well-placed shot, but his focus was split between the fight and the spectacle unfolding before him. Sareth stepped forward, her hands glowing with a blue light that pulsed rhythmically. She made a sweeping motion, and a wave of energy blasted from her palms, knocking two more hunters off their feet and slamming them into the canyon walls with bone-shattering force. The leader, now alone, took a step back, his weapon lowered. What are you?" he stammered, his bravado replaced by fear. Liriana approached him slowly, her gold-and-silver eyes locked onto his. "You made a mistake," she said, her voice cold and devoid of mercy. Before the leader could respond, Liriana raised a hand, and a tendril of dark energy lashed out, wrapping around his throat. He choked and struggled, his feet lifting off the ground as the energy hoisted him into the air. "Liriana, enough," Nathan called out. "We need answers, not a corpse." Liriana hesitated, glancing at Nathan. For a moment, he thought she might ignore him, but then she released her hold, and the leader crumpled to the ground, gasping for air. "Who sent you?" Nathan demanded, stepping forward and pressing the barrel of his rifle against the man's head. The leader coughed, clutching his throat. "The Torvin High Council," he rasped. "They've put a price on the twins, dead or alive." Nathan's stomach sank. "Why?" The man shook his head. "I don't know. They didn't tell us anything. Just gave us coordinates and said to bring them back." Nathan looked back at Liriana and Sareth. "Care to explain?" Liriana met his gaze, her expression unreadable. "We told you already. Your job is to escort us. Nothing more." Nathan's jaw tightened. "You're carrying some serious baggage, and it's painting a target on my back. If you want me to keep protecting you, I need to know what's going on." Sareth sighed, her glowing hands dimming as she stepped beside her sister. "We'll tell you, but not here. It's not safe." Nathan nodded reluctantly. "Fine. Let's move." Chapter 3. The Truth Unveiled. The group pressed on, leaving the canyon and the bodies of the bounty hunters behind. As they walked, the tension between Nathan and the twins was palpable. He had questions, and he wasn't going to let them avoid answering any longer. When they finally stopped to rest in the shadow of a massive rock formation, Nathan turned to the twins. "Start talking. What are you running from, and why does the Torvin High Council want you dead?" Liriana and Sareth exchanged a glance. Finally, Liriana spoke. "We're not running. We're completing a mission." Nathan frowned. "A mission? What kind of mission?" Sareth stepped forward. "We stole something from the High Council, a prototype weapon. It's not just a weapon, though. It's something far worse." Nathan crossed his arms. "Worse how?" "It's a device capable of targeting and destroying entire ecosystems," Liriana explained. "It was designed as a deterrent, but we discovered plans to use it against rival species in secret wars. If it's activated, billions could die." Nathan's blood ran cold. "And you have it with you?" "No," Sareth said. "We destroyed the prototype, but we took the plans and the data to prevent them from rebuilding it." Nathan let out a long breath. "And you didn't think to mention this earlier?" "We didn't think it was necessary," Liriana said. "We hired you to get us to safety, not to judge our actions." Nathan shook his head. "You're lucky I don't walk away right now." "You won't," Sareth said confidently, "because you know what's at stake." Nathan hated that she was right. Despite his better judgment, he couldn't abandon them, not with the knowledge that their mission could save countless lives. "All right," he said, "but if we're going to make it to the transport hub alive, you need to tell me everything. No more secrets." Liriana nodded. "Agreed." As the sun set, the trio prepared for another night in the hostile wastelands. But even as they rested, Nathan couldn't shake the feeling that their troubles were far from over. Chapter 3. The Truth Unveiled. The campfire crackled in the eerie silence of Balrax Prime's night, casting flickering shadows over Nathan and the twins. Nathan sat on a rock, plasma rifle resting on his lap, his gaze locked onto Liriana and Sareth. Their earlier display of power was still fresh in his mind, and the bounty hunter's revelation left a bitter taste in his mouth. "You've got my attention," Nathan said, breaking the silence. Start from the beginning. What exactly is this device? And why did the Torvin High Council think it was a good idea to build something that can wipe out ecosystems? Liriana sighed, folding her long legs beneath her as she sat closer to the fire. Her obsidian skin shimmered faintly in the orange light, but her expression was grim. Sereth stood behind her sister, arms crossed and eyes scanning the darkness like a hawk. They call it the harmonic cascade device, Liriana began. It's not a weapon in the traditional sense. It uses harmonic resonance to destabilize a planet's core frequencies. Nathan frowned. Core frequencies? You mean earthquakes? Liriana shook her head. Far worse. The device can disrupt the electromagnetic fields, destroy tectonic stability, and even render an atmosphere uninhabitable. Within hours, the planet becomes a lifeless husk. No rebuilding. No survivors. Nathan's grip on his rifle tightened. That's insane. What kind of species builds something like that? Saratha's voice was sharp as she replied. The kind that views dominance as survival. The Torvin High Council created the device to ensure no one would ever challenge their power. Publicly, they claimed it was just a deterrent. Privately, she trailed off, her golden eyes narrowing. They were planning to use it, Liriana finished, not just against their enemies, but as a tool to expand their influence. Rival systems, resource-rich planets, they would all fall under Torvin control. Nathan leaned back, the weight of their words sinking in. And you two decided to stop them. We had no choice, Sereth said. We were part of the research team assigned to the project. At first, we believed the Council's lies that it was a precautionary measure. But the deeper we dug, the more horrifying the truth became. We couldn't stay silent, Liriana added. We destroyed the prototype and stole the data, intending to expose the Council's plans. But before we could act, the bounty hunters were sent after us. The Council declared us traitors and put a price on our heads. Nathan rubbed his temples, letting out a long sigh. And now they're throwing everything they've got at you to cover their tracks. Exactly, Sereth said. But it's not just about us. If they recover the data, they'll rebuild the device. We need to get to the transport hub and rendezvous with our contact. They have the resources to make the information public, to hold the Council accountable. Nathan stared into the fire, weighing their words. He'd taken on jobs for all kinds of reasons: money, survival, revenge. But this was different. This was about preventing the kind of destruction that could end civilizations. All right, he said finally. I'll get you to that hub. But I need to know one thing. Liriana met his gaze. What is it? Nathan's expression hardened. That power you used back in the canyon, what was that? And how the hell do I know you won't turn it on me? The twins exchanged a glance. Sereth was the first to respond. It's not something we wanted to use. It's a form of controlled resonance, an extension of the technology we developed for the Cascade device. We modified our biology to harness it as a last resort. It's dangerous, Liriana admitted, to others and to ourselves. But you don't need to worry. We only use it when there's no other option. Nathan didn't fully trust them, but he didn't have much choice. Fine. Just don't pull any surprises. We won't, Liriana promised. The fire burned low as the trio prepared for another night of uneasy rest. But Nathan knew better than to let his guard down. If the Council wanted the twins dead, they wouldn't stop until the job was done. The next day, the journey resumed in grim silence. The wasteland stretched endlessly before them, a barren landscape of cracked earth and jagged rock formations. Nathan led the way, his rifle at the ready, while the twins followed closely behind. As the sun reached its zenith, the air shimmered with heat waves, and Nathan spotted movement on the horizon. A group of figures on hoverbikes was closing in fast, kicking up plumes of dust behind them. Trouble, Nathan said, raising his rifle. Saratha's eyes narrowed. More bounty hunters. The hoverbikes roared closer, their riders brandishing a mix of plasma rifles and energy blades. Nathan counted 6 of them, well-armed, fast, and clearly experienced. Stay behind me, he ordered the twins, taking aim. The first shot rang out, a plasma bolt striking one of the bikes and sending it spiraling out of control. The rider crashed into the ground, disappearing in a cloud of dust. The others returned fire, forcing Nathan to duck behind a boulder. The twins crouched low, their hands glowing faintly as they prepared to use their resonance abilities. But before they could act, one of the hunters tossed a grenade, the explosive hurtling toward their position. "Get down!" Nathan shouted, diving toward the grenade. He grabbed it and hurled it back toward the hunters just before it detonated, the blast sending 2 of the bikers flying. The remaining hunters circled around, their weapons trained on the group. Nathan fired again, taking out another rider, but one of the bikes veered dangerously close, its rider leaping off and charging toward the twins with an energy blade. Liriana stepped forward, her hands glowing with a brilliant blue light. She thrust her palms outward, and a wave of energy erupted from her, slamming the attacker into a nearby rock with a sickening crunch. By the time the last hunter fell, the battlefield was littered with wreckage and bodies. Nathan lowered his rifle, his chest heaving as he scanned the area for any remaining threats. "That was too close," he muttered, wiping sweat from his brow. "Agreed," Liriana said, her voice steady despite the chaos. "We need to move quickly. More will come." Nathan nodded. The stakes had never been higher, and every moment they lingered increased the danger. But even as they pressed on, he couldn't shake the feeling that the worst was yet to come. Chapter 4. The Final Stand. The transport hub was closer now, only a few kilometers separated the group from their destination. It lay nestled within the jagged cliffs of Balrax Prime's eastern range, a massive structure surrounded by towering rock formations that provided natural cover. Nathan could see the faint glow of its automated defense systems in the distance, but the sight brought him little comfort. The bounty hunters weren't the only ones on their trail. For the last hour, Nathan had noticed something larger, more organized, trailing them from the horizon. A convoy of armored vehicles was making its way toward them, kicking up a massive dust cloud that stretched across the landscape. These weren't rogue mercenaries or scavengers, they were professionals. "High Council forces," Nathan muttered under his breath, squinting through his visor. He turned to the twins. "Your people are throwing everything they've got at you, aren't they?" Liriana and Sareth exchanged a grim look. "It seems so," Sareth replied. Her usual sharp demeanor was replaced with something Nathan hadn't seen before: fear. "How many do you think?" Liriana asked, her voice calm but her gold-and-silver eyes betraying her concern. Nathan adjusted his rifle's scope, scanning the convoy. He counted at least 4 armored troop carriers, each one capable of holding a dozen soldiers, along with 2 heavy tanks bringing up the rear. Aerial drones zipped overhead, scanning the terrain with piercing red beams of light. "Too many," Nathan said grimly. "We'll never make it to the hub with them on our tail." Liriana clenched her fists, the faint glow of resonance energy flickering around her hands. "Then we stop them here." Nathan turned to her, incredulous. "Stop them? There are tanks, drones, and God knows how many soldiers out there. I don't care how much power you've got, that's suicide." "We don't have a choice," Sareth said, stepping forward. "If they catch us before we reach the hub, they'll kill us and retrieve the data. Everything we've done will be for nothing." Nathan ran a hand through his hair, letting out a frustrated sigh. They were right, of course. Running wasn't an option, and the transport hub's defenses wouldn't activate unless the twins were physically inside the perimeter. That left only one option. "All right," he said, his tone resigned. "But if we're going to make a stand, we're doing it smart. Follow me." They found a defensible position at the base of a rocky outcropping, a narrow pass that forced the convoy to funnel through a choke point. Nathan set to work rigging the area with makeshift traps, explosive charges, tripwires, and plasma mines scavenged from his pack. It wasn't much, but it might slow the enemy down long enough for them to survive. Liriana and Sareth prepared themselves as well. The shimmering energy that surrounded them grew brighter and more focused, and Nathan noticed faint cracks forming on their skin, like glowing fault lines. Whatever power they were drawing on, it was taking a toll. "You sure you can handle this?" he asked as he finished setting the last charge. Liriana gave him a faint smile. "We've come this far. We're not stopping now." Nathan nodded. "Then let's make them work for it." The convoy arrived minutes later, the rumble of engines echoing through the pass. The lead troop carrier rolled into view, its mounted turret sweeping the area. Behind it, the other vehicles followed in a tight formation, flanked by drones that darted back and forth like vultures. Nathan waited, his finger hovering over the detonator. Timing was everything. If he triggered the charges too early, they'd lose their only advantage. If he waited too long, they'd be overrun. The lead vehicle crossed the first tripwire, and Nathan pressed the button. The explosion tore through the pass, a deafening blast that sent rocks and debris raining down on the convoy. The lead carrier was flipped onto its side, its occupants spilling out in a cloud of smoke and fire. The second carrier skidded to a halt, its turret firing wildly into the air. "Now!" Nathan shouted, opening fire. The battlefield erupted into chaos. Nathan's plasma rifle roared as he picked off soldiers scrambling to escape the wreckage. Liriana and Sareth stepped into the fray, their hands glowing with resonance energy. Liriana raised her arms, and a wave of black crystal spikes shot up from the ground, impaling the soldiers nearest to her. Sareth, meanwhile, unleashed a focused blast of energy that ripped through the second carrier, reducing it to a smoldering heap of twisted metal. The twins moved with precision, their attacks devastating but controlled. But the enemy wasn't giving up easily. The remaining carriers unloaded their troops, and the tanks began advancing, their massive cannons aimed directly at the trio. Drones swarmed overhead, firing streaks of red plasma that forced Nathan to dive for cover. "Sareth, take out those tanks," he shouted, firing at the drones as they swooped toward him. Sareth nodded, her golden eyes glowing brighter. She raised both hands, and a massive burst of energy erupted from her palms, striking the lead tank. The vehicle shuddered under the impact, its armor cracking before it exploded in a blinding flash of light. The second tank retaliated, its cannon firing a shell that slammed into the ground near Nathan. The shockwave threw him backward, and he landed hard, his vision swimming. Liriana appeared beside him, pulling him to his feet. "Are you all right?" Nathan coughed, wincing at the pain in his ribs. "I'll live. What about the other tank?" "Working on it," Liriana said, turning her attention back to the battlefield. The remaining soldiers were closing in now, their weapons trained on the twins. Nathan took aim, picking them off as fast as he could, but there were too many. For everyone he dropped, two more seemed to take their place. "We're getting overwhelmed," he called out. "We need to fall back." "No," Sareth said, her voice resolute. She stepped forward, her hands glowing with an intensity that made the air around her shimmer. "We end this now." Nathan watched in shock as Sareth unleashed a massive surge of resonance energy, her entire body glowing like a star. The wave of power swept across the battlefield, obliterating everything in its path. Soldiers, drones, and the remaining tank were all caught in the blast, reduced to nothing but ash and debris. When the light faded, the pass was silent. The enemy was gone. But Sareth collapsed to her knees, the glowing cracks on her skin spreading like spider webs. Liriana rushed to her side, panic etched across her face. "Sareth!" she cried, cradling her sister. "Stay with me." Nathan knelt beside them, his heart pounding. "Is she?" "She's alive," Liriana said, her voice trembling. "But she's burned out. She used too much power." Nathan placed a hand on her shoulder. "We're almost there. Let's get her to the hub." They reached the transport hub just as the first rays of dawn broke over the horizon. The automated defenses scanned them briefly before allowing them inside, and a team of medics rushed to tend to Sareth. Nathan stood back, watching as Liriana hovered over her sister, refusing to leave her side. Despite everything, they had made it. The data was secure, and the High Council's plans would soon be exposed. As Nathan turned to leave, Liriana called out to him. "Nathan," she said, her voice soft. "Thank you. We couldn't have done this without you." He gave her a faint smile. "Just doing my job." But as he walked away, he couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't the end. The twins had won the battle, but the war against the High Council was far from over. And if they ever needed him again, he knew he wouldn't hesitate to answer the call.